Welcome back to The Critique. Today we're looking at a script for a motivational video titled, "You're Not Ready for How Good Your Life Gets," which argues that feelings of confusion and emptiness are actually symptoms of a frequency shift or life upgrade.
Right. It uses these metaphors like software updates to comfort the listener during a difficult time.
Exactly. Let's just jump straight into the critique of the narrative structure and the rhetorical devices.
I'm ready. Let's dig in.
The script relies heavily on high-level metaphors, software updates, frequencies, energetic signatures, which risks keeping the listener at a conceptual distance rather than engaging them viscerally.
Yeah, I definitely noticed that. It feels very, almost sci-fi in a way. Like, I know the audience for this specific niche really enjoys that quantum leap terminology, but it stays up there a bit too long.
They do, and honestly, the software update hook is strong. It's actually the best part of the title's promise. But the weakness is that the script stays in that abstract realm of energy and systems for the whole time.
Right.
It describes the sensation of the change, feeling glitchy or slow, but it lacks sufficient grounding in the reality of the change. By staying so cerebral, it misses an opportunity to connect with the gritty, practical texture of the listener's actual life.
Exactly, because energy shifting is a cool concept, but getting fired or going through a breakup, that is an actual experience.
Precisely. While the listener might nod their head at the theory, they aren't feeling that gut punch of recognition. The script is operating at 30,000 feet, but the listener is living on the ground.
Yeah, if I'm listening to this in my car, I want to feel like you're describing my bad Tuesday, not just reading me a textbook on metaphysics. So how do we fix that?
The suggestion for improvement here is to bridge the gap between the metaphysical and the mundane by pairing every abstract metaphor with a concrete, real-world vignette.
Okay, so anchor the woo-woo in the right now.
Exactly. We need concrete examples. For instance, the script currently says something like, plans completely dissolved despite your best effort.
Which is super vague.
Very vague. That could mean a canceled lunch date or an actual bankruptcy.
Right.
So instead of leaving it vague, describe a specific scenario. A contract falling through at the 11th hour when the pen was literally in your hand.
Oh, that hurts.
Right? Or a sudden, inexplicable revulsion toward a hobby that used to define your weekends, leaving you staring at a garage full of gear you no longer want to touch.
That is fascinating. The garage full of gear image immediately puts a picture in my head. You feel the financial cost, the wasted time, the identity crisis of it all. It's tangible.
It turns a frequency shift into a Saturday afternoon reality. That's where the actual connection happens for the reader.
I also noticed the script mentions connections that would have overwhelmed you before, which is a powerful idea that you're getting stronger, but again, totally abstract.
Right. We can bolster that by describing what that interaction actually looks like in practice. Show the behavioral change.
Give them a benchmark.
Listener holds a boundary without their heart racing, contrasting it with their old people-pleasing tendency. You could write, you'll find yourself saying no to a request, and instead of the usual panic, you feel a quiet, steady calm.
That completely grounds the frequency shift in a specific social interaction. And what about the physical aspect? Because it talks about nervous system rewiring, which is a massive buzzword right now.
Yes, we need to connect the nervous system rewiring to physical symptoms beyond just feeling glitchy. Mention sudden changes in sleep pattern, like waking up at 3 a.m. consistently, or sudden dietary shift, like your body just rejecting foods you used to love.
Grounding the frequency talk in biology.
Exactly. It makes the spiritual concept feel like a physiological reality.
That really clarifies things. It takes the script from a lecture to almost like a diagnostic tool. The listener can go, oh, I'm not going crazy. I'm literally just rebooting.
It validates their physical experience, yeah. So let's move to the next major area. The section dismissing friends and family as speaking noise or being from another planet creates a defensive us versus them binary that weakens the protagonist's emotional maturity.
That was a really sharp observation. I caught that too. There's a line where the narrator basically says, everyone around you is asleep and you're the only one awake. It felt, a little superior.
That is exactly the weakness. The script frames external advice, like get out more or try harder, as an antagonistic force or a sign of others' ignorance.
Which risks alienating listeners who actually value their community.
Validation is important, and the listener probably does feel isolated, but focusing solely on they don't get it definitely makes the listener sound arrogant or brittle.
It creates a lonely hero complex. If the only way to be enlightened is to view everyone else's noise, That's a very lonely mountain to climb.
Because maybe the friends are just trying to help, but they're just using the wrong tools.
Exactly. So the suggestion is to reframe the disconnect with others not as they are wrong and you are right, but as a linguistic incompatibility.
A linguistic incompatibility. Okay.
Validate the outsider's intentions while clarifying why their logic no longer applies.
It's less about superiority and more about translation. I like that. How do we execute that in the text?
Well, as a concrete example, we can acknowledge that the advice to snap out of it is actually really good advice for the old version of the listener.
Oh, interesting.
We could add a line saying, they aren't trying to hurt you, they are trying to revive the version of you they know. Their advice works perfectly for the old operating system, but you aren't running that.
That is so much more compassionate. It stops the listener from villainizing their support network. It's not malice, it's just outdated data.
Exact. And building on that, let's look at the word noise. Instead of saying their voices are noise, which is dismissive, phrase it as the listener outgrowing the dialect of their old life.
Right, acknowledging that the old way actually had value. It was a language you used to speak fluently. It's just no longer relevant to you.
It frames the separation as a natural evolution, like moving to a new country, rather than a rejection of the people themselves.
Is there a way to establish the connection between the listener's silence and the outsider's confusion a bit better?
We can definitely bolster that. Add a line about compassion. Something like, you don't need to explain yourself, not because they are incapable of understanding, but because you are still under construction, and the blueprint isn't ready for public viewing.
That is a subtle but profound shift in tone. It makes the protagonist feel much more grounded and less reactionary. It's protect the dream, not reject the world.
Exactly. Moving on to the third point. The narrative voice heavily favors passive construction. It chose you. You're being reconstructed. You're being upgraded, which risks disempowering the listener by suggesting they are merely a vessel for external forces.
Yeah, the purge chose you. It sounds almost fatalistic. It promotes total passivity if you read it a certain way.
That is the weak. While the theme is surrender, the script risks promoting a total lack of agency. If the universe is doing all the work, the dismantling, the clearing, the rewiring, the listener is left with no agency other than waiting.
It creates a waiting room dynamic. I'll just sit here on the couch until my life upgrade is done.
Right, which can lead to disengagement or a sense of victimhood. Even if it's a benevolent victimhood where the universe is the bully for a good cause, it's not engaged.
It's not a very active motivational piece if you're just a bystander. You want to feel like you're doing something.
Exactly. So the suggestion for improvement is to introduce the concept of active surrender. Show the listener how they are a participant in this clearing process. We need to give them verbs that imply effort within the stillness.
What are the potential ways to describe doing nothing as an action? Because that sounds like a paradox.
We differentiate between doing nothing and holding space. For example, describe the actual effort required to sit in the emptiness without reaching for a distraction.
Oh, I see.
The script could say, it takes immense strength to stand in this hallway and not knock on the old door. Your work right now isn't building. It's withstanding the urge to fix things that are meant to stay broken.
Withstanding the urge. That is powerful. It's a muscle. It makes the waiting feel like an athletic feat of emotional endurance.
It validates the difficulty of the inaction. We can also look at the purge of furniture or people in the script. Frame it as a co-creative act.
The universe presents the exit, but the listener does the brave work of not chasing after what is leaving.
Exactly. So instead of you are losing friends, try you are bravely unclasping your hands from connections that have already drifted away.
Unclasping your hands is a choice. It puts the power back in the listener's control.
And finally, let's look at the phrase, you're not losing yourself. We can change this to, you are consciously releasing the parts of yourself that are too heavy for the climb.
Consciously releasing.
Right. It gives the protagonist an active verb within the context of the transformation. It changes the narrative from I am being stripped to I am shedding.
Shedding implies growth, whereas being stripped implies that. That tonal shift is absolutely crucial for a script that wants to be empowering. You want to feel like a snake shedding its skin, not a victim being romped.
Beautifully put. Now, let's discuss the pacing. The middle section exploring the doorway and the emptiness loops through similar emotional beats multiple times, slowing the narrative momentum right before the climax.
I definitely felt that. We had the doorway metaphor, then the phone update metaphor, then the conservation of energy explanation, then the clean sweep metaphor. We were completely circling the airport.
The weakness here is that the script reiterates the feeling of being in between using multiple analogies. And while each is valid on its own, stacking them back to back creates a rotational effect. The argument spins in place rather than advancing toward the solution.
The listener gets the point after the first analogy. The subsequent 3 just feel repetitive.
Exactly.
I wonder, though, if the writer just couldn't kill their darlings. They probably liked all the metaphors.
That is highly likely. But the suggestion is to consolidate those analogies into a tighter sequence that escalates tension rather than repeating the premise. We have to move faster from the description of the symptom to the reveal of the purpose.
So if we have to choose, which one stays?
The operating system update seems the strongest because it's the most relatable frustration. Everyone knows that feeling of a phone freezing up during an update.
So true.
So the concrete example here is to select that analogy and completely cut the standing in the doorway section. Mixing the digital metaphor with the architectural metaphor of the house muddies the water. Stick to the tech metaphor if that's the title's hook.
That keeps the imagery consistent. Start with software, stay with software. What about the sections on forcing old interests and loud music?
We should condense the paragraph about forcing old interests in loud music into the earlier section about conservation of energy. This groups all the functional mechanics of the transformation together.
Ah, I see. Because currently, the script explains why it's happening, gives an analogy, explains why again, then gives another analogy.
Exact. We want to group the why, the conservation of energy, with the what, the phone update, in one tight block.
That would definitely pick up the pace. It stops that weird start, stop, start feeling. But is there a risk that focusing solely on structure might make us lose some of the poetic language?
If the poetry is slowing down the car, it has to go. The goal is to accelerate the transition to the quiet voice.
Right, getting to the payoff.
The listener understands they are stuck. We need to get them to the gentle nudges in the coordinates sooner to reward their attention. By the time we get to the coordinates concept, the listener might have completely tuned out if we spend 5 minutes describing the emptiness in 4 different ways.
And the coordinates idea, the concept that you're being sent new map data, is actually one of the most original parts of the script. We definitely want to get there while the audience is still fresh.
Precisely. We need to respect the listener's time. They are already feeling stuck in their life. They don't want to feel stuck in the video.
Fair point. So where does this leave us overall?
Let's do a quick recap. The source material has a very strong core message about reframing loss as an upgrade. However, to maximize its impact, we need to address 4 key areas. First, we need to ground the abstract metaphor, move away from purely energetic talk, and anchor the concepts in the gritty, specific realities of the listener's life. Contracts breaking, dietary changes, boundary setting.
Make them feel it in their gut, not just understand it in their real stakes.
Second, reframe the outsider antagonist. Soften the defensive tone toward friends and family. Instead of us versus them, frame it as a change in dialect.
Transforming the narrative from a battle to a journey. Bridges instead of walls.
Third, convert passive language into active surrender. Empower the user by giving them agency. They aren't just being updated. They are holding space, releasing weight, and actively withstanding the urge to revert.
Isometric exercises for the soul, giving them a job to do while they wait.
And finally, tighten the middle section to prevent narrative looping. By selecting the strongest metaphor, the operating system update, and condensing the repetitive explanations of emptiness, we drive the narrative forward toward the climax much faster.
It really does seem like a piece that could go viral if it just hits those notes a little sharper. The bones are absolutely there.
I agree completely. The source material has a powerful emotional core and a really strong hero's journey arc. By implementing these structural and tonal shifts, the piece moves from a comforting monologue to a robust, actionable manifesto for personal evolution.
It goes from a pat on the back to a push in the right direction.
Well put. To the listener who submitted this, you have the skeleton of something profound here. We invite you to refine the draft using these lenses: grounding, reframing, empowering, and tightening, and submit the next iteration. We'd love to see how this evolves. That's all for this critique.
Can't wait to see the update.
Until next time.